CGTN, China Global Television Network.
You're watching Global Business. Hello and a warm welcome to the show. I am Peninah Karibe. Let's begin with a look at the markets. South African stocks enjoyed an early rally after positive retail data and comments from US Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell that cemented rate cut expectations, although this faded in the afternoon session. But economists also expect the South African Reserve Bank to cut its main lending rate at a monetary policy meeting next week. The benchmark Johannesburg Stock Exchange Top 40 index fell 0.59% to 51,188.17 points, while the broader all-share index dropped 0.42% to 57,356.02 points. Coming up on the show tonight, Egypt's central bank keeps key lending rates unchanged. US President Donald Trump orders an investigation into France's tax on tech companies. And Chinese music platform Boomplay takes the African market by storm. Egypt's central bank is keeping its benchmark interest rate steady, opting to assess the impact of new round of subsidy cuts. Prices are currently rising at a slowing rate in the North African economy, increasing the chances of an interest rate cut in the coming months. Let's now cross over to Cairo, where Yasser Hakim is keeping tabs on this story for us. Yasser, what was the Monetary Policy Committee verdict?
Well, it has decided to keep the interest rates fixed at 15.75 and 16.75%. And this is the third session in a row now that it has remained as it is. The next policy committee meeting will be in 2 months' time. And obviously, this will determine if there will be any changes in the interest rates in the next session. But for now, it has been fixed as it is.
What factors, Yasser, informed the committee's decision?
Well, there's been a strong showing by the Egyptian economy in the last month. In June, for example, the inflation rates has dropped by 4%. And the unemployment rate has dropped from 8.9 to 8%, which is the best performance from the unemployment rate in the last 4 years. GDP has been up from 5 to 5.6%, which is also the strongest showing since 2007-2008 fiscal year. However, what the central bank has decided is that to stay and wait to see what the numbers will be in July, because in June there has been an increase in fuel prices and electricity prices the first day of July, and this is due to subsidy cuts in energy as part of the economic reform plan that has been agreed upon with the IMF. So this obviously would lead to some inflationary effects. Already the prices of transportation has increased by 15%. So I guess the central bank has decided to wait and see the results in July and August before deciding whether to make any movements in interest rates in the next session. So it has kept it as it is now, even to avoid any more inflationary effects.
Now, according to statistics released yesterday, inflation levels have fallen sharply. What key interventions have influenced this?
According to the central bank's statement, there are two reasons for that. First of all, the strong measures for the financial numbers and the budget deficit and expenditure. There has been a lot of work on reducing expenditure and balancing the payments, and this has kept inflation down in the last month. Also, the prices of vegetables, and that was the driving force for pushing the inflation down by 4%, also the best showing for the last 4 years in the inflation rate, going down from 13.2% to 8.9% if you compare with 2018, and it's 1.9% down if you compare to May from June. Obviously, this is driven by the vegetable prices, which has gone down by at least 15 to 25% according to the products, and the basic necessities and basic products have gone down, which pushed the inflation rates down overall in June.
But Yasser, is this inflation, Yasser, this inflation drop, is it being felt in the real economy? Are Egyptians really feeling a relief?
They're feeling it in, like I said, some of the vegetables, food items that are used every day, but not overall. And of course, it's already high. So it is felt that the prices have gone down by some products by 10, 15%, some products 1%, meat and chicken by 15%. These are basic products that are used every day by Egyptians. They felt the prices are down. However, they are already up because the inflation has reached around 30% in last year, or the year before it has reached about 14%. So there has been an increase because of the high inflation of 13% in the last couple of months. But obviously, the lower the inflation, it means there has been lower prices. And this is mainly in the vegetables. But if you're talking about fuel, if you're talking about transportation, if you're talking about other products, it's still high, and still the Egyptians need to feel there's a difference there. Not now. The government promises that in the next fiscal year it will be felt even more, and that the Egyptians would feel that the prices of real goods and real everyday expenses will be down for especially the low-income earners in the country. So it still remains to be seen in the next few months, and probably on the fourth quarter of 2019, that's when it will be really felt hard.
All right, Yasser, thank you for that. Yasser Hakim, live in Cairo. Now, the first round of wage talks in South Africa's platinum mining sector is underway. The Association of Mine Workers and Construction Union is setting the wage and benefits bar a fair amount higher than in 2015. The opening demand this year is for a minimum wage of $1,200 per month, and that's a 48% increase on the previous negotiated figure. Angela Kupler explains.
The majority union in all three platinum producers is AMCU, and it kicked off the 2019 round of wage negotiations with separate talks with each of the producers.
So this was an opportunity for us to engage the union on those specific demands, to ask questions for clarity and to understand the context in which it's done, and to start that conversation about how do we then transition from the demands to something that's workable and acceptable, and this is really the start of that process.
Prior to this first round of talks, the AMCU president was very specific about the approach the union would take. The first step would be focused on making the demands.
It depends on how does the employer respond. Yes, it depends. So if the engagement becoming progressive will give, but we are not going to waste time and be sitting in the boardroom for a month. No, negotiating until come November. No.
The producers are working very hard to present a united front, and also suggesting that the unions and the producers have the same end goal in mind.
I think at the core we might differ about exactly the detail and how we get there, but at the core I think we all want the same thing, which is a sustainable, profitable industry and organizations that can provide job security, employ employees and care for them in the best possible way. Now, at the core, I think we all agree on that. How we get there and how that looks might differ.
We will present our demands, let them talk to our demands. I think 4 meetings will be enough. If they want us in the ring, we are ready for them.
It was 4 years ago that this area here in front of this platinum producer was packed with AMCU protesters demanding that 12,500 Rand salary increase. Everyone's hoping that we don't go back to that again this time round. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
A look at your corporate news now. And ArcelorMittal South Africa may cut more than 2,000 jobs as part of a widespread restructuring to cut costs. Following the announcement, the firm's shares plunged. South Africa's steel industry is suffering from high costs for electricity and raw materials and has been hit by the weak local economy. Kenya has ordered telecoms firm Safaricom to stop processing payments for sports betting companies. The move may potentially shut down a lucrative source of revenue for the company. Online sports betting companies have grown rapidly in the East African nation in recent years to achieve combined revenue of $2 billion last year. Cell C, whose debt rating was recently downgraded to reflect that a default had become a virtual certainty, has asked law firm Bowmans to investigate business units possibly involved in irregular practices. Shares in major shareholder Blue Label Telecoms plunged 15.1% to 3.31 rand in early trade on Thursday, the worst level since 2008. Microsoft is opening its first European retail store in London. The store will showcase technology ranging from Xbox games and Surface tablets to augmented reality and LinkedIn masterclasses. The US software group has secured a prime position in Oxford Circus, central London, where its three-floor flagship could be seen by about 86 million shoppers and tourists every year. And that's a wrap of your corporate news. You're watching Global Business. Coming up after the break, hundreds of thousands of Nigerians sign up for a controversial Ponzi scheme. And Ethiopia announces ambitious measures to curb unemployment.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global Business, only on CGTN.
Every story starts out like this.
Okay. We'll head out now.
Beyond the rush of the numbers, there's always a more fundamental question. What happened? Who has been affected? When market-moving decisions are made, who's responsible and why?
Let's get some reaction on ground. Joining us in Johannesburg is Sunitra Naidoo. Hello, Nairobi.
This is how all stories begin. See how they end. Only on Global Business.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home, and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and Global Business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
The popular Russian Ponzi scheme, Mavrodi Mundial Moneybox, has resurfaced again a few years after dashing the hopes of over 3 million Nigerians. This time, dubbed Triple M Corporation, the financial pyramid is promising a 50% return on any amount invested in it. That's about 20% more than what the previous version offered. Its comeback hits at a time when many Nigerians are suffering from extreme poverty. As of the first half of this year, over 100,000 Nigerians have re-entered the platform, staking up a maximum limit of about $7,000 US. Over the years, Triple M's scheme has been a subject of global controversy. This follows its collapse in 2016 in many countries, including Nigeria. Let's get more on this. Nifemi Oluboyede is the product manager of Carbon, a digital platform that empowers individuals with access to credit, simple payment solutions, and high-yield investment opportunities, and easy-to-use tools for personal financial management. He's live for us in Lagos. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us tonight. So, for anybody looking from the outside, this is really baffling. The Securities and Exchange Commission and the Central Bank of Nigeria have warned Nigerians about this scheme. Yet to look at the numbers, over 100,000 Nigerians as of June this year have already rejoined this scheme. What is drawing people to this scheme despite the numerous warnings from government? Sir, can you hear me? All right, I'm afraid we seem to have a technical problem with Nifemi, but we shall try sort it out and get him back. Meanwhile, let's say in Nigeria, the global cashew industry is estimated to be over $7 billion. But despite being the leading global producer of cashew nuts, West Africa is not benefiting much from the cash crop. Around 90% of raw cashew nuts produced in the region are exported rather than processed. And by failing to scale up mechanized processing of cashew nuts, West African producers are losing big time. Deji Badmas has been speaking with the president of the National Cashew Association of Nigeria about the issue.
West Africa alone accounted for about 43% of global supply last year. But when you look at processing, Africa still lags behind. What exactly is responsible for this?
Of course, as you will expect, you will see a movement, from the low level of the chain, into the high end. And that's what we're seeing now. Of course, before you can talk about processing or value addition, you must have the product. And so in the past 10 years, for instance, Nigeria as a country, from when I became the president of the association, we've upscaled the production from the level of about 90,000 tons in 2011 to 260,000 metric tons. So the availability is key, and then you begin to grow it, and then you begin to do the processing.
No doubt there's growth in production, but for someone like you who exports cashew nuts, and by the way, quite a number of your members also export cashew nuts, what exactly would prevent you from processing the cashew nuts here at home?
Basically, when it comes to value addition, there are things that are required. You're talking about power. You're talking about infrastructure. You're talking about finances. You're talking about even the development of the value chain. And I can tell you all of that, we're seeing some kind of transformation in that area. We are not where we used to be 10 years ago. Power is getting better in Africa. In Nigeria as well. Infrastructure also getting better. Finance, access to finance, been very, very difficult. I tell you, some years back, maybe less than 1%. But now you can see proactive measures being taken by government, particularly the present government that we have, the President Muhammadu Buhari, with his economic team, looking at how to diversify the economy away from oil. And of course, what you earn from selling raw will be much lower from when you add value. And of course, clearly you are creating more jobs. clearly you are, increasing the base of the economy.
You look across Africa where cashew is grown, would you say we have the required manpower and the skill to drive large-scale mechanized processing of cashew?
In the direction of, local fabrication of this equipment, transfer of knowledge, technology, cooperation with countries like India and Vietnam to see how we synergize and how even some of them can come and invest in Africa and, develop what we have. And then, of course, skills transfer, training the people. We're even talking about having a center where we can have a pool of the workers in the factory, because one of the challenges we have at the moment is getting the people to work and being stable on the work. Some of them, they land the job and then over time they go. So we're trying to see how we can have that pool of human resources and training in Africa.
Tunisia has recorded a significant harvest growth in the northern and southern regions of the country. Harvesting was assisted by high technology to monitor plantations as well as the threat of fires. CGTN's Adned Shawashi has more on that story.
According to the National Agriculture Observatory, the grain harvest for the 2018-2019 season is estimated at nearly 21.5 million quintals, against 14.3 million quintals during the previous season.
The harvest could reach 24 million quintals. It's the second largest harvest since 1956. This is unprecedented in Tunisia in the past few years. This is the result of the readiness of the state and farmers, as well as good climatic conditions.
The minister added that logistical measures have been taken to ensure the transportation of cereal crops. Authorities are relying on National Army trucks to transport the surplus of cereals.
We have a limited storage capacity, but cereal collection and transport operations continue across the country towards the grain board. The transportation consists of moving the harvest through freight trains, 60 wagons carrying 500 tons per wagon, allowing overweight.
Firefighters, forestry workers and several farmers from the northwest managed to put out several fires that affected over 200 hectares of hay and soft wheat.
The causes of the fires remain unknown, but the temperatures are very high. The Civil Protection Division has mobilized all necessary means to prevent the spread of flames and circumscribe the fires.
The satellite imaging technique had been adopted to evaluate the growth of plantations by climatic variations throughout the growing season, from the beginning of sowing until April.
The 2018-2019 season was characterized by high rainfall, which contributed to good production. The rainfall recorded from September to the end of May exceeded the usual average in most of the field crop-producing regions. Adned Shawashi, CGTN, Tunis.
Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has announced a series of measures to tackle the country's crippling unemployment rate. Abiy says his latest policies will encourage a new wave of entrepreneurship in Africa's fastest growing economy. From Addis Ababa, here's CGTN's Koleta Wanjohi.
Ethiopia has at least 3 million people in need of work, and there are another 7 million soon to be job seekers. Ethiopia, which has a poor record of supporting private enterprises, is now looking for new solutions.
On a yearly basis, about 1.8 million jobs can be created by new micro enterprises. Generally, given key limitations for micro enterprises such as finance, working spaces and premises, and key infrastructure such as electricity and water are solved for these specific enterprises. And secondly, we are also looking into maximizing the opportunity of having more young people working in larger industries, so manufacturing, along with our industrial parks as well.
An ambitious plan is underway to export some 200,000 skilled laborers to the Gulf states, Europe and Asia by this time next year, so their jobs can be counted too.
Two benefits mainly. One is obviously to create jobs, but at the same time also to encourage much more quality jobs, and so that the country could earn foreign currency that can be able to support the economy. And we're learning the experiences of many other countries and also from our past experience as well on how we can handle this.
The government hopes that providing a legal route for Ethiopian migrant workers overseas would also stall human traffickers. The move is controversial because thousands of Ethiopians have been deported from the Gulf states in recent years, with many claiming they were tortured. Ethiopia is hoping that reforms in the private sector and liberalization of state monopolies will also boost jobs, especially in telecommunication, airline industry and logistics. The country's telecommunications industry, currently monopolized by Ethiotel, is to be opened up to other operators by 2020.
The government has decided a market structure which we call 2+1 market structure, which means there will be 3 big players in the telecom sphere in Ethiopia, 2 new greenfield one and one, the incumbent, will be privatized. And we hope a strong another operator will join the incumbent and join us in transforming the sector.
It hopes this will trigger more innovation-based jobs.
This communication sector is a key enabler. Sort of the kind of economy we're thinking is an economy that allows people to come up with ideas, try it out, work it. It works or it fails, but an opportunity to try and succeed or fail. Startup nation is how we envisage Ethiopia in the communication sphere. So for that, you need significant investment.
The government is also looking at the 13 industrial parks to attract more private manufacturers that will in turn offer jobs to citizens. And with the now relaxed investment policies, it hopes its citizens will seize the opportunity and work their way towards self-employment. Coletta Njohi, CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Now, in many African countries, trading across borders often involves going through a third currency. According to Afrexim Bank, currency conversions end up costing the continent about $5 billion a year. To solve this, some states are trying to switch to a common currency, like the ECO in ECOWAS. In others, common payment systems are being established. But are crypto systems like Facebook's Libra an alternative? CGTN's Ramanyang put that question to the president of the African Development Bank.
Well, you know, I mean, if you take a look at the way in which you trade, obviously we need to have confidence in our own currencies to be able to trade. There's a lot of conversations that are going on right now in terms of whether you can have common currencies in different sub-regions of the world, I mean, of Africa, just like you have in other parts of the world. Those are ongoing conversations. You need to have confidence in your own currency.
But isn't it an emotional one, though? Because a lot of people will be like, well, why am I taking, if you're in Nigeria, for instance, and I come here with my Kenyan shillings, the reaction might be, but why would I trust this?
Well, you know, when you have big open markets in which people are trading, take the case of ECOWAS, where they sit talking about how, you know, to have a common currency, that will facilitate trade because everything will be done in the currency of that region. You know, and that's the kind of thing we need to continue to look at. For us at the African Development Bank, we are supporting series of studies to look at the pros and cons of all of these approaches. The second thing, even for us, is that in terms of the loans that we give ourselves, whether it's trade finance or whether it's lines of credit, we are working quite a lot to make sure we can do those in local currencies because people trade in local currencies, and when they trade in local currencies, and you are basing your trade or transaction on dollar, then it means you have a foreign exchange risk effect that which you're passing on to the end, you know. And so basically trading local currency, I mean commodities in local currency financing is the best way to go. We've done that in Uganda, we've done that in Nigeria, we've done that in South Africa. So we'll continue to do quite a lot of that. And I want to say that, you know, the efforts that are also being put up by the Afrexim Bank with the initiative that they are launching to make sure that people can also trade in local currencies is quite, we support it very strongly. We support the Afrexim Bank. We give them $1 billion, you know, in terms of trade finance and also risk guarantees on trade. And so we will continue to support that process. But I think at the end of the day, when you have a market of $3.3 trillion And as that grows, I believe Africa will get to the point that we'll start saying to yourself, why trade in other people's currency? Let's trade in ours.
One of the ways in which people are trying to solve that problem is through tech. So we've seen, for instance, blockchain being used quite a bit in some places to enable the movement of goods and currencies across borders. A more recent example, perhaps, of this is Libra. They pose this fascinating question: what if it was easy enough to just move money from point A to point B with a click? Do you think that might be the future?
Well, everybody was talking about, cryptocurrency and all of these things. I'm not going to tell you my views on those right now. Because absolutely, people still trust a lot of money they can hold, things that they can see, and stuff like. It's going to take a while for that to really deepen. But the thing is that we got to make sure digital payments you were talking about. I mean, take a look at what has happened in digital payments world today. It didn't actually come from the West. It actually came out of Africa. It came right out of your country, actually, with the M-Pesa that was done. And so for us as African Development Bank, we are investing more in digital payment systems. Digital payment systems are going to fast-track transactions within the continental free trade areas, no doubt about it. It's also going to be very critical as you look at financial inclusion, especially for women. It's going to help tremendously also in times of security, personal security. Most of the trade that's actually going to be done or being done, and more is going to be done off in the years coming, is actually in the informal sector. And so the more people carry cash, and people get mugged and so on, and taken advantage of. So digital payments are going to reduce their transaction costs and obviously give them also quite a lot of security when they have to actually trade across borders. And in particular, it's going to be very critical to moving the informal trade more to the formal trade as well.
You're watching Global Business, still ahead. US President Donald Trump orders an investigation into France's tax on tech companies. And a California gym turns your workout energy into electricity. Quite fascinating stuff. Stay tuned for more details.
Business in Africa is at the crossroads. We celebrate those who are adopting and thriving despite the challenges, from grassroots to big businesses. Global Business takes you along for the ride as we track the making of a giant. Only on CGTN.
Economic data out of the country. The country's foreign currency reserves.
With a dedicated and diverse team of anchors, CGTN now brings Africa to the palm of your hand.
I'm Peninah Karibe in the heart of Nairobi, which is bustling.
From everyday heroes to the continent's most powerful figures, we bring their voices to you.
We haven't changed. And this is something most of us are very excited about.
We bring you news that's changing perspectives. News that brings Africa to the world. CGTN. See the difference. How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Accra is my kind of city. That's because when I'm here, I feel like I'm back home in Lagos or Abidjan, which are two of the major cities I grew up in.
Business in Africa is high risk.
After about a decade covering business news on the continent, I've learned it's all about the high risk, but also the high returns and the high energy. You simply have to adjust in order to keep pace. When I started out as a journalist, my dream was to open people's minds to the different perspectives. From the CEO in the boardroom to the trader out in the street, we all have different stories. From Accra to Addis Ababa, from Cairo to Cape Town, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Here at CGTN, we realize that Africa is on the move, and it's moving fast, but we're moving right along with it. I'm Ucheo Koronkwo, and I'm a business anchor and reporter at CGTN.
Let's have a look at the top stories of the day. Barely 2 days after clashing with security personnel at the National Assembly, Islamic Movement of Nigeria have stormed Lagos State to continue their protest. It's a continuation of the group's demand for the release of their leader, Ibrahim El-Zazaki, who has been detained by the federal government. In Libya, a deadly explosion in Benghazi has killed 4 and wounded 33 others. This comes after 2 car bombs exploded at a funeral for a former Special Forces commander. The country's East-based ministry spokesperson says that none of the military leaders has been killed or injured. And finally, 7 people, including 6 tourists, have been killed in a violent storm that swept across a region of northern Greece on Wednesday night. Gale force winds, heavy rain and hailstorms lashed Halkidiki near the city of Thessaloniki. According to officials, at least 100 others have been injured. And that's a wrap of the day's top stories. US President Donald Trump is ordering a trade investigation into a plan by France to tax technology companies. The proposed tax would impact companies with at least $844 million in annual revenues. That would put US tech giants like Google, Amazon and Facebook firmly in the crosshairs of Paris. Washington's trade investigation is set to determine if the levy poses an unfair trade practice. Results could lead the US to impose new tariffs or other trade restrictions on ally France. The U.S. Federal Reserve's chairman, Jerome Powell, has warned the U.S. Congress on what he describes as uncertainties facing the U.S. economy. Mr. Powell's testimony boosted the chances of a rate cut at the Fed's July 31st meeting. CGTN's Giles Gibson explains from Washington.
In the financial services industry, as long as
when the Fed chairman speaks, global markets hang on his every word. The S&P 500 briefly broke through the 3,000 mark for the first time ever, as Jerome Powell signaled a tactical shift.
At our June meeting, we indicated that, in light of increased uncertainties about the economic outlook and muted inflation pressures, we would closely monitor the implications of incoming information for the economic outlook and would act as appropriate to sustain the expansion. Since then, based on incoming data and other developments, it appears that uncertainties around trade tensions and concerns about the strength of the global economy continue to weigh on the U.S. economic outlook.
Those uncertainties mean business investment has flattened off. Throw in weak inflation on top of that, and Wall Street now believes a rates cut in July is a certainty. Breaking with tradition, U.S. President Donald Trump has been piling on the pressure in recent weeks for the Fed to do exactly that.
If we had a Fed that would lower interest rates, would be like a rocket ship.
But many economists believe the Fed and its chairman are completely immune to outside pressure.
I know that people parse his words and try to say, well, they are or they aren't going to cut rates, or they're more likely or less likely, but the rate thing is really just a distraction from what's going on. And the truth is, if they believe that the economy is too weak, then they have to do something. If they believe that inflation is too much of a risk, then they have to do something. And it really just comes down to that.
Jerome Powell also told Congress
my answer would be no.
That he wouldn't quit if President Trump asked him to step aside, adding the law gives him a 4-year term, and Powell says he intends to serve it. But economic headwinds could push the US central bank to give the president exactly what he wants. Giles Gibson, CGTN, Washington.
2019 marks the 40th anniversary of the establishment of China-US diplomatic relations, and Shanghai is holding a series of events to celebrate the occasion. Meiji spoke to several US businesses in Shanghai to find out what's on their minds over 4 decades of economic cooperation across the Pacific.
SAIC GM is one of the biggest China-US joint ventures in Shanghai. The two partners first started their business 22 years ago and now have 13 factories in 4 major regions of the country. The joint venture has introduced a variety of vehicles into the Chinese market, from affordable family cars to luxury brands. SAIC GM has experienced firsthand the business advances over the past 4 decades and just this year opened a new Cadillac house in Shanghai's Pudong district, the first outside the United States, which they are happy to show off to visitors.
And then this facility in of itself is an extension of the relationship and partnership that we're trying to develop with our customers here. You've just walked through an amazing facility that prospective customers and current customers will be able to enjoy as we bring great events, art events, music events, and things that will be in keeping with their expectations. So we want this to be very special for Cadillac customers, and we think we've created something that they're really going to appreciate.
Coca-Cola has also been a witness to the development of the China-US relations. The company was among the first U.S. firms to enter the China market after the two countries established diplomatic relations in 1979. It shipped more than 3,000 bottles of Coca-Cola to Beijing in January of that year in a deal with COFCO, and set up its own plant in Beijing in 1982. Now the company has more than 40 factories across the country, with one of its biggest bottling plants located in Shanghai.
Our business has started out where it was really a very small business, and now it's our 3rd largest business in the world, soon to be one day our 2nd largest business in the world. As China becomes more of a consumer-centric country, you're going to see huge expansion.
While the outward global economic environment may be changing, foreign firms in China are looking forward to continued cooperation between Chinese and U.S. firms and improving business and economic results.
We all hope that the current economic environment between China and the US will improve and blossom in the next few years, given the changes that are taking place with Mr. Xi and Mr. Trump's conversations. And we look forward to that being a successful outcome, which I'm sure it will. So it's a matter of how we can develop different industries and widen the scope, and I think that this is what Mr. Xi wants to do, is to open up China and Shanghai and develop the door and interact more with foreign companies and countries, and that's very exciting for everybody.
The United States is now China's biggest trading partner. The trade volume between the two countries has grown more than 230 times to more than $630 billion over the past 4 decades. Mi Jiayi, ICS for CGTN, Shanghai.
A gym in California is harnessing human workout energy and turning it into electricity so as to power the facility. The fitness center has installed a non-motorized treadmill and several upright cycles made by Washington-based equipment manufacturer Sports Art. Here's CGTN's Daniel Arap-Moy with more details.
The Sacramento Eco Fitness has installed several upright cycles made by Washington-based equipment manufacturer Sports Art. The cardio machines have inbuilt inverters similar to those found on solar panels and wind turbines, which turn the watts generated during a workout into electricity. The electricity produced is then used to power the gym. Any excess electricity produced is sent to a battery to keep the lights on during off-peak hours.
I have somebody right now exercising, but while they're exercising and burning calories, they're actually able to produce watts, which we use that energy to power the facility itself.
Antonio says a spin class on stationary cycles produces between 1,000 and 2,500 watts. His gym also owns a treadmill, which is self-powered and uses electromagnetic and mechanical braking system to generate power. The machine uses no power. It only moves when someone steps on it and pushes the belt around. Many of the members at this fitness facility say they joined the gym purely because they liked the eco cardio machines.
Well, working in the environmental testing industry, it's really important to me that everything is environmentally conscious. So combining fitness and something that's, of course, really good for you and the environment is just probably one of the best ideas that anybody could ever come up with.
For Avina, his self-powered gym is only the beginning. He hopes that someday gyms will be able to power an entire city on their own by producing enough energy through workout sessions. Daniel Arab Moy, CGTN.
Those in France are certainly feeling the heat. As Elena Casas reports from Paris, blistering heat waves are forcing residents and city authorities to rethink the way people live.
In June, France sizzled during its hottest week on record. Good news for tourists, school children who got extra time off, and the air conditioning business.
We've seen a 30% rise compared to a normal June and 10% more than last year's heatwave. We've been seeing a constant rise for 2 or 3 years, not so much from offices and hotels since they already have it, but from individuals.
In the US, about 90% of households have air conditioning. In France, it's 4%. Europeans have traditionally often thought it was unhealthy. Now they're also concerned about the energy air conditioning consumes. Historic buildings are protected by a French planning law that bans air conditioning units, and in Paris that's most residential buildings. Rather than change the rules, the city seeks to discourage people, saying air conditioning is too polluting. This is one alternative. The Clinispace network pumps water out of the Seine, cools it to 3 degrees, and pumps it into the walls of around 700 buildings, including the Paris Ritz and the Louvre, meaning they don't use air conditioning at all. The water goes back into the river, not wasting a drop.
We use half as much electricity as traditional air conditioning, so this project is important in reducing the city's carbon emissions.
The water is also pumped into smart benches like this one, keeping them cool in the heat.
This is all part of the City of Paris's plan to adapt the city's infrastructure to help the population cope with more and more intense episodes of hot weather.
Urbanization concentrates heat, so on a hot day it can be up to 10 degrees warmer in Paris than in the surrounding countryside. The city is also planning to plant more trees and increase green space by 40% by 2050, aiming to keep Parisians cool while the temperature rises, without further warming the planet. Elena Casas, CGTN, Paris.
A look at the commodities market. Oil prices hit a 6-week high today as oil rigs in the Gulf of Mexico were evacuated ahead of a storm, while an incident with a British tanker in the Middle East highlighted tensions in the region. Gold prices scaled a more than 1-week peak as the dollar slipped after dovish remarks from the US Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell boosted the case for an interest rate cut later this month. Coming up on Global Business. A Chinese music platform, Boomplay, is taking the African market by storm.
Images may appear to be identical, but looks can be deceiving. The difference is not always obvious. It has to be discovered. There are always different sides to a story. We put the focus on the details. To see more, to understand better. CGTN. See the difference.
The greatest journeys. The greatest sights. The greatest adventures.
Here in Peninah, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. And no one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Music streaming in Africa was relatively untapped a few years ago, but now, with the rapid adoption of mobile handsets, better internet connectivity and cheaper data services, the industry is rapidly expanding. Here's CGTN's Terry Wangari explaining how one Chinese platform is expanding its music streaming business in the massive but still nascent market of Africa.
China has broken through the lucrative market of live streaming music in Africa through Transnet's mobile app, Boomplay. The mobile application currently has 46 million subscribers in Africa, beating Spotify and Apple soundly. Through a series of partnerships, the pre-installed app is on Tecno, Infinix and Itel phones, which are leading in market share in an attempt to penetrate this competitive market. That, and the fact that their mode of payment is specifically suited to the African market.
The features of the app are really user-friendly to the African market. One of the features that I can really put forward is the local payment. So you use your local currency to do your payment as opposed to the international currency, dollar or euro. So this has helped in terms of penetration to the locals, not only the capital cities of the countries that we are in, but also the regional towns and cities in the countries.
While Spotify and Apple Music target users mostly in developed markets, Boomplay is expanding its music streaming business in Africa. The music streaming app invests in African music by promoting and funding local artists. Local subscribers say the app has opened up their world to undiscovered African content.
It's changed my perspective, really. You know, I used to think there's no talent in Kenya, but on Boomplay now they're all in one place. You can find them easily. People I've never even heard of, you know, even from like the upcountry places. Yeah, you find them right there, just arranged for you.
In March, Boomplay signed a direct licensing agreement with Warner Music. The agreement allows it to distribute more than 1 million songs to its community of listeners in 10 countries, including Cameroon, Rwanda, and Zambia. This gives an even wider selection of music to African listeners, but its success has not come easy.
The number one challenge is, and I think the oldest challenge, not only for Boomplay but cuts across board, is piracy. In the African market, people are not used to buying music. They're used to pirating the music, getting the songs for free. Even the artists themselves give out the music for free to some websites. So we're trying to discourage that from the artist perspective, showing them the business side of distribution in terms of their catalog. And it has been a good journey.
Boomplay is forging ahead with its plans to dominate the music streaming business in Africa after it raised $20 million in funding in April. It plans on using the funds to fuel expansion across the continent, including francophone regions in West Africa. Terry Wangari, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Tourism revenues in Tunisia rose by about 42.5% in the first half of this year, standing at $692 million compared to the same period last year. The country's economy is currently reassuring tourists after twin suicide bombings targeting security forces struck the country's capital. The attack killed a patrol officer and injured at least 8 people. Adnet Shawashi has the details.
Less than 2 weeks after the suicide bombing in downtown Tunis, authorities announced that the country's tourism revenues have not been affected but have rather soared 42.5% in the first half of 2019 to $692 million compared to the same period last year.
The Tunisian government crisis management has been exceptional. There have been no cancellation or early departures. The conditions are perfect for a good season. Tunisia is a peaceful country.
The occupancy rate of hotels in some beach resorts ranges between 95% and 100%. In the last week of June, an increase of 9.3% compared to the same period last year. This 5-star hotel is located in the coastal city of Hammamet. The occupancy rate is 100% until January 2020.
There are many advantages for which tourists spend their holidays in Tunisia. It's close to many European countries. The climate is very attractive because it's a sunny escape 365 days per year. People also come for the quality of our service.
Authorities predict that bookings will continue at the same pace until next fall. The season kicked off by a remarkable comeback of the classic European markets.
Honestly, there's everything here. The service, the quality, the people are kind. I've never had any problem in this country. I've been to many cities and beach resorts. The holiday in Tunisia is exceptional.
Since January 2019 up to June 30, the tourist areas of Sousse recorded a 5.2% increase in the occupancy rate of hotels, 15.6% of the number of tourists, and 17.4% of nights. 4 years ago, Tunisia was deserted by foreigners following a wave of terrorist attacks that killed 39 tourists in the same beach resort of Sousse and 21 people at the Bardo Museum in Tunis. Tourism accounts for 8% of Tunisia's GDP. Experts consider it as the pillar of the country's economy. The Ministry of the Interior has deployed thousands of agents at beach resorts, hotels, and tourist areas. The new security strategy aims to guarantee the safety of millions of foreign tourists who will visit Tunisia this year. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Let's look at the currencies now. The rand's rally to the dollar, driven by excess liquidity in the local money markets amid increased dollar demand from oil and merchandise importers. And with that, we call it a day on Global Business. We welcome your feedback. Send it to the contacts on the screen and follow us on our digital media platform. I'm Peninah Karibe. Thank you for watching.